right. Hey, quick heads up before we dive into today's episode. I am so excited to be hosting a free live webinar called Fuel Smarter, Run Stronger, and I would love for you to join me. This is actually the first live event that I've hosted since 2023, and I don't want you to miss it. If you've ever wondered why you are working so hard, but you're just not seeing improvements with your running, why you keep getting injured every time you start a training cycle, or why you're constantly feeling confused about what to eat when throughout the day, then this webinar is for you. I'm going to be breaking down why the nutrition advice you've been hearing over and over again is just wrong if you're a runner, and what you can do instead to fuel better and get the consistency you need to reach your running goals. And trust me, it does not include cutting carbs or overthinking every single meal that you eat. This webinar is happening on Wednesday, June 18th. It's totally free, but you do have to register to save your spot and get the link. You can find the link to register in the show notes, so make sure you do that. And whether you're chasing a PR this year or just want to finally feel stronger on your runs and really feel like you're making the improvements that you deserve, Fuel Smarter, Run Stronger is here to help you get there. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are talking about how you can better avoid the post-run hangries. Now, I'm sure I don't need to do a deep dive explanation on what the post-run hangries are, and you probably have experienced at some point in time as a runner. It can happen either like immediately post long run or race, where you're getting to the end of that run and you're feeling hungry and you're getting like, you might be starting to struggle towards the end of that long run because you are starting to feel so hungry. Right when you walk in the door, it's like the feast begins. Or for other runners, it's more of a matter of you might not feel hungry right off the bat. Like you might not be hungry when you first get back from your long run, but as the day goes on, that appetite starts to creep up and up and up until it reaches the point that you are feeling very, out of control with the food decisions that you're making. Or maybe you find yourself just eating more than you planned to, or having just a really hard time the rest of the day managing the nutrition choices that you want to be making. So it can happen a couple of different ways, but whether it is kind of occurring for you immediately or a little bit later on, whatever the case, the strategies that I'm going to share with you about better avoiding those post-run hangries are going to apply either way. So either scenario that you might find yourself in, these tips and suggestions that I have for you today, really around your nutrition timing, are pretty much going to be the same. What I want you to do is kind of reflect on how this tends to play out for you if it is something that you struggle with, and figure out maybe where you can make changes. You might be someone who, all three of the steps that I'm going to list today, maybe you need to work on all three of them. Or maybe there's just one or two things that you could be doing differently. And, just a couple of things that you can tweak that honestly can make a huge difference here. So the post-run hangries, I would say, happen to most runners, or at least most runners that like I interact with and work with and stuff like that, being both a dietitian and a running coach, people who are having issues or struggles kind of in both areas, tends to really be kind of, my specialty. So, to paint you a picture, you go for a long run, you get home, and for the rest of the day, you are absolutely starving, right? You cannot seem to get full, and you're just like eating and eating and eating. And, even for me personally, like I see a huge difference for myself in my appetite and eating behaviors after those long runs where I fuel, what I would say fuel well or fuel properly, and when I don't. And it really can have an impact on future workouts, your recovery, your ability to replace and replenish fat muscle glycogen, and of course, the choices and the quality of the eating decisions that you're making throughout the rest of the day, right? And I'm not trying to say or suggest that eating after a long run is like a bad thing, right? Like, we don't want to be thinking to ourselves that we have to get home from a long run and like, oh, well, I shouldn't be hungry. I shouldn't be eating. or anything like that. Like, no, the opposite, right? The more you run, the more energy you need. And so the goal here isn't to go hungry and be trying to like avoid food or avoid eating for the rest of the day, because that's wild and not at all what I'm saying. But a lot of runners ultimately end up struggling with their performance, maybe with their weight or body composition, by not really understanding or being aware of how the timing of their nutrition matters when it comes to avoiding some of these specific scenarios, right? And you see it sometimes out there where people talk about like, they can kind of count on gaining some weight during marathon training, right? It's just expected. It's just part of the process, right? You need all this extra fuel. And so you're just eating more. And, just seeing the scale go up is just part of marathon training. And to a very, very small degree, this might be the case for some people where like between training season and off season, there's a small fluctuation kind of up and down a little bit on the scale. Like this to me, it's not a problem. If you're happy, I'm happy. I don't think you need to be doing anything differently. If we're talking about like a couple pounds up or down, that's just your norm. But I don't believe that it's true or necessary that every person who is training for a distance event inevitably should or is going to gain weight as part of the process, right? Because all of this just comes down to energy balance. And while we do not have super sophisticated methods for us just day-to-day people to use to really understand calories in versus calories out, right? Like the ways that we track these things have a lot of flaws, have a lot of issues. So that's where the struggle can come in terms of like calorie counting and that sort of thing. But the concept of energy balance, right? This comes down to the laws of thermodynamics. The concept of energy balance is legitimate. And so if you are always gaining a lot of weight when you're training for a marathon, that means that you are consuming more calories than you're burning, which sounds crazy, right? Because you're burning all these calories doing all this running. But if you're finding that every time you train for a race, you're so hungry and then you're eating so much, especially after these long runs, that the scale just kind of keeps climbing, right? Each time around, you're not really sure like how you got here or what to do about it, right? How do I get a better handle on my appetite and get a better balance and all of that kind of stuff. And so if that's where you've been stuck and where you're struggling, then this is really what we're getting into in this episode. It's not just like small fluctuations that kind of up and down the same few pounds in season, out of season, that kind of thing. It's really for people who feel like they just can't find that balance and they can't find that consistent or fairly consistent weight in and out of training season. And it's like a lot of weight gain that you're seeing to the point where it's like interfering with your ability to fit the same clothes year after year or feel good in your body anymore and that stuff like that. The reality is, of course, that bodies change over time, right? Like we should not expect to have the same body that we might have had decades ago. That isn't going to be the case for most of us. However, I do want people to have an understanding of the factors that impact their weight and body composition and things like that over time, so that if there are things here that are maybe modifiable for you and you feel motivated to do so and want to do so, then you have the ability and the skills to do that. I am not sitting here saying that I think any individual person needs to lose weight or should have weight loss as a goal. But I know that a lot of people do feel very conflicted and confused around their weight, around what impacts it, around why certain things are happening and that sort of idea. And so I'm just kind of sharing this information, not because I think that people need to lose weight or should want to lose weight or anything like that, but just so that you can make better decisions for yourself. And so, if we have a better strategy and a better understanding around the timing of our nutrition, then we can actually perform better during our long runs, which is great, and not maybe struggle through the long runs, struggle to make it to the end of a long run. But then also by eating the right things after our run, we then can have a more predictable appetite throughout the rest of the day, which can help us make better food choices and avoid some of this unwanted weight gain that we might see as a result of the training cycle. Like you go out and you do your long run. Maybe it's 12 miles, let's say, is your long run for that day, right? And so you've burned a give or take 1,200 calories, right? For some runners, it'll be a lot more. For some runners, it might be, right around that 1,200 calorie mark. Whatever the number is exactly, it doesn't matter. But you are then starving for the rest of that day. And you basically turn into the hungry caterpillar, right? The very hungry caterpillar. Do you remember that book? I read it to my kids now all the time, and it just makes me laugh because it makes me think so much of like runners and like runners post long run. So I don't have the book sitting here in front of me, but I'm going to get this a little bit wrong. But like, for the little hungry caterpillar, he's chugging along and he's looking for food and he's very hungry. So he eats like one apple, and then he eats 2 strawberries, and then he eats 3 plums, and then 4 blueberries. And then like by the end of the week, all hell breaks loose. And this little caterpillar eats like a sausage, cupcake, candy, pizza, cheese, like, right? It's an absolute gong show. And then he has a stomachache. But and I mean, we've all been there, right? Like I think we all see ourselves in the hungry little caterpillar, which is probably why this is like a classic children's book. Anyway, it takes a lot of effort, right? It takes a lot of running, like hours of running for us to burn these like 1,000, 2,000 calories, but not actually a whole lot to eat back that many. And unfortunately, our brain, as we'll talk about next, like our brain does not aim for the concept of energy balance. So it's not like we go and burn whatever number of calories during this run, and then our brain is like, okay, so you need to eat XYZ number of calories, and I'm going to shut off my appetite and tell you that you're full so that you don't overeat, right? The human brain has absolutely no motivation to prevent overeating, right? It's very easy to overdo it. And so this is where we can see struggles and issues where like, kind of on a day-to-day basis or even on a week-to-week kind of basis, we are having these very low calorie days and then these very high calorie days. So to avoid the post-run hangries, what can we do better, right? Where can we start to do things a little bit differently so that we are more in control and managing our appetite a little bit better? We're getting in the quality nutrition that we need for recovery, right? We're not just ignoring our hunger signals and trying to just not eat, but how can we like set up the rest of the day so that we're successful and not starving and having to either try to combat that hunger or giving into it, and then we're just ending the weekend not feeling really good about how things are going. So this probably will surprise a lot of people listening to this podcast, but the fueling up process for those long runs starts the day before, right? And this is especially true if, say, and for all examples here, I'm just going to talk about somebody who's doing a long run on a Saturday. So I'm going to reference Friday, and I mean that to be like the night before your long run. So if you do your long run on a different day, then just adjust in your mind for the day of the week that I'm talking about here. But if your long run is on a Saturday and your Friday is a harder session or a longer session, right? If it's not a rest day on Friday, then you are simultaneously trying to recover from your Friday workout, while you are also trying to increase the glycogen stores that you have available for during that long run the next day. So it might be as simple as having like a higher carb dinner. Maybe you're having a snack in the evening, something with more carbs, like a bowl of cereal or a couple slices of toast. But if you also have a longer, harder workout on the Friday, then you might need that whole day to be a little bit more carb focused and a little bit higher carb, right? And the reason for this is we want to fuel up better before the long run. So we literally have more gas in the tank to be able to go further faster. If we consistently have really depleted glycogen stores, so muscle glycogen is the carbohydrate that we burn when we run. If we consistently have these really depleted muscle glycogen stores, we're going to struggle, like potentially even on these really easy runs. Yes, our easy effort, we are burning mostly fat for fuel, but we are never burning entirely fat for fuel, right? We need some glycogen to be contributing some of the calories that we're burning, even during these easy workouts. And so if we don't have that available, like if we're quite literally running out of gas, this is one of the things that can lead us to have an overzealous appetite later on, right? The brain senses this depletion of muscle glycogen. And so then the brain is like, wow, that sucked, right? That was dangerous because, the brain needs glucose, the brain needs sugar to function. And so if the brain is like, I have no energy, let's never do that again, right? So it's going to be sending out a lot of these extra hunger signals, especially for those like tasty, quick calories, right? Those, easily digestible carbohydrates, things that are higher in sugar, like that quick energy, that quick abundant energy, because the brain is trying to protect us. And sometimes it's trying to protect us from ourselves and, the bad decisions that we sometimes make. So fueling up well the day before, and then of course the morning of, right? Like having that pre-workout meal. Now, of course, for these long runs, we're not trying to, eat 12 miles worth of fuel before we go. We are just putting a little bit of something in our stomach. Again, we fueled up, started that process the day before. So we have more carbs in our system overall than we might during our regular weekly run. The second thing that we want to do better is fuel better during the run. So, like taking in more fuel during those long runs. And so, if you're going to be out there for longer than 90 minutes, which is going to be a typical long run, right? At least 90 minutes, taking calories during your run can, of course, help boost performance. Again, help you run further, help you run faster. But it also helps to keep your blood sugars more stable, right? As you're getting towards the end of that long run, taking in that little bit of carbohydrate is going to stop your blood sugars from getting too low during that long run. So this is helping us to avoid bonking, but is also in turn going to reduce those ravenous hunger signals coming into play during the later stages of that run and afterwards. And then the third thing we want to do, and this is a big one, is fuel properly after the run, right? And I totally understand, even before I had kids, right? At the best of times, it can be really hard to get in a proper post run meal. You've been gone for a few hours, you've got things at home that need your attention, you might have plans for the day, you got kids to look after, you're walking in the door and immediately the kids are all over you, or you've got errands to run, you've got activities to get to, other obligations. Like the long run in and of itself is a big time commitment. So then to have to take all this extra time to like eat and cook and all of that stuff, it can be really tough. And the other thing that can happen is that we get back from that long run and our body temperature is elevated, right? We're hot, we're sweaty. And so that can actually reduce our appetite in the short term. So we get back from the run, we are not hungry whatsoever. And the idea of eating anything just totally turns our stomach. You also might be someone that just generally, by the end of a long run, your gut is a little bit on the sensitive side. And so, again, cooking and eating a big meal might just not be interesting to you at the moment. But then what happens is you kind of get busy with the day. You don't really feel hungry yet. The chaos of the day kind of takes over. And actually, that post run nutrition ends up being a real afterthought. But I would really, really recommend that if you take like one big thing away from this episode today, is when you get back from your long run, make a top number one priority to get something in nutrition wise. And this might be something very simple, right? A protein shake. If you're hot and you get back and you're warm and you find that, the idea of taking something in, like drinking a protein shake or whatever, right afterwards really turns your stomach, then make some smoothies, fruit smoothies, and freeze them. They make those little popsicle, or even I have at home some little like silicone like freezy molds, like a popsicle mold or freezy mold or like whatever. Freeze it somehow into like a pop so that you can get home and you can like have this frozen smoothie pop that gives you a little bit of nutrition. It's cold, right? It's helping you cool down, bring your body temperature down until you can get that meal in. But that's not enough, right? Like you're going to get a couple grams of protein and, a little bit of carbohydrate in one of these smoothie pops, right? They're probably not going to be that big. Or you can even just like, I'll have people even just like freeze a protein shake into like this sort of smoothie pop idea, right? It's another good option. So you're going to get in a little bit of nutrition, but like that's not necessarily going to be enough to like get you through the rest of your day by any stretch. It's a matter of just trying to cool you down, bring your body temperature down, give you a little bit of nutrition so that then that kind of bridges you to be able to actually plan that proper post-run meal. Don't leave it to chance. Don't decide you're going to worry about it later. Figure it out when you get home, like whatever, right? Because life is going to get in the way. You're going to have something else to do. You're going to go get cleaned up. You're going to get distracted. You might, again, have kids' activities or errands or something to get to. And before you know it, it's been like hours and you haven't actually eaten anything properly yet. And then all of a sudden your appetite kicks in and now you just can't seem to stop eating. So if you know you have a short amount of prep time or need to be somewhere right away, keep some leftovers from dinner the night before handy, right? Maybe it is a protein shake or a protein bar, and then you're bringing a snack along with you, a wrap, a sandwich, eggs and toast. Like, doesn't have to be something really complicated or something really fancy, but having that combination of protein and carbohydrates is going to help to replenish muscle glycogen. And then the protein is what's going to better regulate our appetite. If we get in carbohydrates along with at least 25 grams of protein, not only are we going to be able to stay full for a little bit longer than if we're kind of just like snack on like mostly carb stuff. And the carbs are great, right? We need that for muscle glycogen replenishment, which is very important, especially if you do have a workout the next day. But if we're looking at wanting to feel full and have that better appetite regulation as we go on, then the protein here is really key. And of course, fiber is key too, right? Like we don't necessarily want to have a ton of fiber in our immediate post-workout meal, only because we do want like muscle glycogen replenishment fairly quickly. But for the rest of the day, we get in those carbohydrates, and those are going to be primarily from those high quality, high fiber carb sources, right? Our whole grains, our fruits, our starchy vegetables, and pairing those with protein is going to really help us to avoid that ravenous, post-run hangry that we can experience. So at the end of the day, it all really comes down to our fueling timing and choosing the right things at the right times in order to, get in the nutrition that we need for recovery, right? We're not just trying to avoid eating and not eat so that we're not, overdoing it. But it's about setting up the day and setting up that long run day for success, right? Starting the day before even, so that we're able to have a great quality run, right? The quality of our runs are so much better when we're well-fueled going into the run. But then also we can just have more control and just feel better and more in charge of our eating choices and our eating decisions. So yeah, I mean, the day after your long run, the evening of your long run might be a time that you do like to indulge a little bit. And that might be a day that you're going to order takeout with your family and you're going to, have whatever you feel like and not worry too much about nutrition for that meal. Maybe you are going to plan to have like a fun snack or dessert or like something that day, right? But I also want it to be in an amount and in a kind of balance with everything else that still ultimately gets you where you want to go with your performance, with your nutrition, with your weight and body composition, right? Like whatever your goals are, we want that balance of being able to include all foods and have all foods fit into our plan. But also, if we have specific goals that we're trying to achieve, we don't want to stay stuck and stay struggling. So I really hope that this helped you today. If you're a runner who consistently deals with the long run hangries, and you're tired of it and you want to figure out something else, if you know there's a better way and you want to find out what that is, then I hope that this episode really helped to kind of plant some of those seeds, get you thinking about things differently, and that you maybe have a couple tips for how you can do things differently going forward as we get into, the late spring and fall marathon prep season. Now, I'm really excited to also share, as we wrap up this episode, a new way of working with me this summer. So if you are not already familiar, I offer one-on-one run coaching as well as nutrition coaching. And I have an online program for runners called the Fuel Train Recover Club. And so this is a fantastic one-stop shop program where you get access to customizable training plans, you get meal plans, recipes. We've got a ton of educational content, modules, videos. We do live group calls. We talk about like different topics throughout the year that are important to understand. I mean, race strategy, carb loading, off-season nutrition, like hydration. We cover it all. This program is just got everything you need if you want to improve your performance as a runner, your relationship with food and exercise as a runner, all the things. So a couple different ways you can work with me right now. But for this summer, I am also offering a nutrition strategy session. And so what this is it's going to be a one-on-one session where you and I are going to sit down together, virtually, of course. We're going to sit down together and we are going to create a personalized nutrition strategy for you. And so this is great because you're going to have the opportunity to get your questions answered. You're going to have the opportunity to get everything that you need to start fueling correctly and start fueling for your goals. And, really just walk away with a deeper understanding of how you can optimize your whole nutrition strategy to get where you want to go with your running. So you can book that right now. The link is in the show notes, as well as the links to the other ways that we can work together. And I have opened a limited number of these nutrition strategy sessions for this summer. And if this is what you've been looking for as a way to work with me, then I would love to connect with you. So that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And we will catch you right back here for next week's episode. Bye for now.
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.